Hey everyone, welcome back to Navigating in Balance, a podcast by Three Gimbals. I'm your host, Benjamin Butler, and I just wanted to say, first of all, to our longtime listeners and fans, we are back after a brief hiatus where I spent some time thinking about the direction I wanted to take the podcast, thinking about our guests, some of the topics that we've covered, and exploring branching out into new and different formats. And I'm very, very excited to announce this as the first episode in a series of shorter podcasts that are going to be me solo talking about important but sometimes overlooked geopolitical topics. These will serve as a complement to some of the full-length content that we've produced. And of course, you'll continue to see the strategic insights in 60 seconds, our popular YouTube shorts. So if you haven't seen those, or if you don't know about them, go and check those out on YouTube at our channel, Three Gimbals on YouTube. You can search us, you can find us, or Spotify for that matter. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today. So something that you may have heard about, it was of course talked about a little while ago. Greenland was in the news. You know, um, what is Greenland? A lot of people don't know. It hadn't been something that had popped up very often. It's kind of overlooked at times internationally. A lot of people know Iceland, but what's Greenland, right? So you've heard about oil in the Middle East. You've heard about rare earth metals in Africa and tensions in the South China Sea. And we've talked a little bit about a number of those things on this podcast. You know, we've focused on Chinese influence in a variety of ways, especially in South America, and some of the different ways that they've had their hand in things like the supply chain or port infrastructure of different nations. But let's talk a little bit about Greenland and why it is such an important place today and why it's posed to be an even more valuable global resource in the future. It is ruled by the nation of Denmark, so it's covered in ice. It's been overlooked in comparison with some of its neighbors, but buried beneath its surface lies something that is of great interest to the rest of the world: critical minerals. Think of things like molybdenum, rare earth metals, and even things like uranium. And, you know, when those metals are mentioned, when those elements are mentioned, there's going to be significant interest. So, in a small area of Greenland called Kvanefjeld, there's a deposit of rare earth metals and uranium that's now kind of found itself at the center of a geopolitical tug of war, if you will. And why is this? It's, due to the obvious fact that these are the materials that are powering electric vehicles, computers, wind turbines, and military radar systems. These are all things that are going to have ever increasing value in the future. Things that are involved in battery production, for example, which battery research is going at a very rapid pace, and countries are trying to keep up with one another or prevent adversaries from gaining access to critical technology. So essentially, the US has expressed a lot of interest in Greenland. We're not going to get into any of the politics of that, but the fact remains that Greenland's resources could help a lot of the world, or at least parts of the world, break free from China's essentially domination of rare earth metals, which they currently refine more than 85% of the entire world's rare earths. So, having access to any amount of reserves in Greenland could prove to be a strategic advantage for any country that chooses to try and pursue that. You know, Greenland isn't necessarily just rich in the minerals, though. Now it sees itself at the center of this kind of tug of war. It's rich in strategic options, right? And so if Europe or the US can tap into these deposits and gain a foothold into rare earth metals, essentially, you can kind of get a leg up on the green tech kind of arms race. So one that's not under the thumb of China. A little bit of background. I had mentioned earlier, it's part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but it governs itself as an autonomous entity within that structure. It's a little bit difficult to explain. So its leaders are asserting kind of a clear vision of economic and political independence. And this is going to ultimately probably be powered by the mining revenue that the country will see from the sale of these rare earth metals. The U.S. has opened a consulate in Nuuk, Greenland, which is the largest city. This is the first time we've done that in a very, very long time. We are, as the U.S., investing in Greenland's infrastructure, mineral surveys, trying to essentially beat China and Russia to the punch. Melting sea ice and the increasing navigability of Arctic waterways also could be possible in the next 10 to 20 years. So we could cut shipping routes by thousands of kilometers, and Greenland is right there in the middle. Asia to Europe, it's a perfect middle point. But I think this whole story would be just not enough if we didn't talk about Greenland's people. After all, it's its own entity. They're not going to sit there and just allow some gigantic country to roll in and take the country's minerals, right? So the rare earth uranium that they found in Kvanefjeld has essentially been a hot point. There's been blockades to the development of mines for that uranium. There's been community activists that have organized against mining. The idea that essentially Greenland's seen what's happened to a lot of countries with rich deposits of rare earths or other valuable minerals, right? A lot of times places will come in, they'll set up shop, they'll extract the wealth, and leave the host nation with a fraction, almost nothing relative to the value that was generated. So, a lot of people in Greenland obviously don't want that to happen. There are pushbacks for environmental reasons, there's pushbacks for socioeconomic reasons. But as the world kind of continues racing towards military modernization, battery infrastructure improvement, the materials that are buried beneath Greenland's permafrost are gaining a ton of attention. So China's watching closely. It holds stakes in Arctic Russia as well as some other sites. It has diplomatic channels open with Greenland as well, so the U.S. is not the only one. Meanwhile, NATO has kind of positioned itself to view Greenland as like a forward operating base, forward operating location, just like during the Cold War. So when the U.S. had built Thule Air Base on the northern coast of Greenland, we're now kind of seeing NATO kind of take at the ball, so to speak, in terms of generating kind of renewed interest in Greenland as a military site. So in the end, Greenland's story is still kind of yet to unfold. It remains to be seen what will happen over the next 5 to 10 years, but needless to say, its place in the world is changing very quickly, and who gets to mine? Who gets to decide? And is it going to be the people who live there? Is it going to be striking a deal with the U.S.? Is it going to be striking a deal with China? What are the effects going to be for NATO, one way or the other? All this remains to be seen. It's fascinating, and I just wanted to say thanks for letting me bring this to your attention. Thanks for listening again to Navigating in Balance, a podcast by Three Gimbals. You can find any of our content, any of our episodes that we have on our YouTube or on our Spotify. This has been your host, Benjamin Butler. Until next time, everyone.